you doing?
Hi.
How
Hi,
are you?
everybody?
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. How's your week been?
Really?
Tell us everything. Gotta hear about it. Welcome to the gathering room.
Yes, here we all are, sort of. Is this on my, yeah, good, excellent. Oh, two peoples has joined us. Aha, River's here.
Hi,
Woohoo.
River.
How you doing? It's just, there's 5 people now.
Thanks.
It's so wonderful when you guys show up. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, love.
Ah,
So good to see you. How are you this Sunday?
isn't it great that we can just sit here and cough in each other's faces without any problem at all?
Is everyone washing their hands?
We've been hand washing
doing
like
a lot.
raccoons.
A lot of hand washing.
Okay, so
Hi,
Susan, is there a
Susan.
lot
Hi,
of
Melanie.
anonymous peeps? Yeah,
Well,
This
they're
is-
not anonymous. They just haven't chosen to say
they
hi
haven't
yet.
chosen to say hi.
Maybe
Hi.
they're shy. Hi, we love you.
The number is going up. Maybe this is a sign of the times that there are people coming in, but they're not saying hi.
Booter's in Doylestown.
Oh my
Hi.
gosh, you're like a stone's throw.
Yeah.
Hi, Anne Corinne and
She's in
Leanne.
Lillehammer, which is a bit further.
Yeah, it's a stone's throw also, but you have to throw really hard.
Yeah. You need to go
Really
get your
hard.
arms. Now everyone's
Ah,
showing up.
Hi,
Nice to
JC
see
and
you
Karen
all.
and another Karen from Florida.
You know what I do, you guys, when someone lets me into traffic? Like when I'm trying to get in and they go, all right, go. And then I go, I love you.
She does.
It's one of my little quirks. It really freaks them out for some reason. I don't know why. It's just an
Sometimes she
expression
does
of
it.
gratitude.
Sometimes
for
she
me.
does it when somebody's road raging and they're honking and they're like, ah, and she just leans out the window and mouths.
I'm a very safe driver. I don't like lean my head out the window when
At 90 miles an hour. I love you! Like one of those dogs on the internet. If you haven't seen those dogs on the internet, you are missing out. Yeah, so here we are talking about fearlessness.
Anyone
with
feeling a
Marcia
little
and me and
bits of
Don-in-law.
fear this week?
A little bit of fear this week.
Feeling little frissons of fear?
Yeah, I mean, not to date this recording too severely, but it's a little frightening out there. And it's,
One way or another.
let me just say again, that it's wonderful we can gather in this way and be together and see each other, at least virtually, and be completely antiseptic. Because yes,
I'm
this is
pro-septic.
this is sepsis, go. No. So yeah, this is being recorded at the very beginning part of the spread of a scary virus that is affecting all. And the thing that's so interesting is I knew that we'd probably get people here in the gathering room from Norway and from Africa and South Africa. We've had different countries of Africa chime in. From Australia, from Europe, and we're being united by technology and by our common interests, but the whole world right now is becoming more of a community than it ever is in the absence of a global pandemic. I mean, the last time this isn't as scary, thank God, as the Spanish flu that hit when my father was a child, but they didn't have cars, they didn't have phones, they didn't have anything to inform. So it wasn't a global community. Now we have like people, we can check constantly on each other and know that we're all united in focusing on this one thing. And in a strange way, it's sort of community building.
Yeah, but we're not focusing on it too much.
No.
I mean, you
No.
can, there's...
Yeah. But we thought we'd talk about fear today because
She thought she'd talk about
I thought
fear.
I'd talk about fear.
I thought I'd go over here for a little
Go
while.
over there.
Yeah.
Just get on over. Okay, so there are many, many, many reasons, not just germs and things, why all of us experience a lot of fear. The biggest being the fact that we are animals that can conceive of our own death and know its inevitability. And other animals are not burdened with this foreknowledge, right? Your dog is just like, cheers, I'm going to die someday. What does that mean? But we know that the end is coming at some point, and that gives us a basic underlying existential fear. And then we have, as I was just saying, informational fear coming in from around us, whether it's something, whether it's terrorism or climate change or germs, whatever it happens to be at the moment. There are lots of reasons to be afraid, right? So it happens to be true also that living in perpetual degrees of anxiety and fear is the single worst thing you can do for yourself. It creates a very, very fertile environment for the development of degenerative illness. So if you're afraid of cancer, you're more likely to get cancer. If you're afraid of diabetes or heart disease or Alzheimer's or any of these things, they're more likely to develop in a state of continuous stress. And that can happen because the environment puts stress on you. For example, if you don't have heating in your house, there's a stressor that is physical. But most of our stress is from our brains, from things that we know about that actually aren't present. And I have lived whole decades of my life in a state of really intense fear when there was actually not much hurting me, right? Like I had intense anxiety. I've had intense anxiety in the past few months, not in the past week or so, but I mean, it's much rarer since I use the measures I'll be talking about today. But all of us, I think it's safe to say we've all been super scared many times when there was nothing physically threatening us. So find your fear. Right now, we're going to engage with it by first letting it be what it is. So whatever your fears are today, I want you to sit back, and they may be, for some of you, they may be the day might be very quiet. Maybe you don't have any fears, but that's very unlikely. If there's any fear in you at all, find it. Now let it be as big as it wants to be, and let it tell all the stories it wants to tell. So if you did happen to be afraid of catching disease, you could think about all the symptoms that might occur and how your loved ones would get it. You could think about, I've been a little nervous about the effect of the scare on the economy, on what that's going to do to the poor. I mean, I have a variety of fears. I find them, and they're living right in my solar plexus right now. And I experience them as a fluttering kind of sickness. Not quite nausea, but this very nervous part of me that's kind of like a flock of birds that's like all shut in the same cave. They're like, so I let that sensation be what it is. Okay. So if you don't have to reach for a fear, if you're always afraid, and I know a lot of you who show up regularly have said on the comments that you lived with a high level of fear. So just let it be what it is. It may be that you feel you're surrounded by it, drowning in it. Okay, let it be what it is. Get as scared as that animal self inside you wants to get. Okay, now the first step to dealing with that, you've just taken the first step, which is to acknowledge it. But the first step to calming it down is when your fear is big, the first thing you do is you get very present. So almost all fear, no, sorry, correction, all fear is focused on the future, all of it. I used to disbelieve that, and then I spent years examining it. And sure enough, I remember having an argument with Byron Katie, my favorite spiritual teacher, on a stage in Chicago. And I was saying, well, what if somebody came to cut off your arm? And she said, well, he wouldn't be there yet. And I'd say, but what if he did it? She said, well, then I'd just have to, I'd be thinking, glad this won't last. This moment isn't lasting longer than it is. And then I'd be thinking, glad that's over. And I was like, no, you can't be that way. She said, no, you really can be that way. If you are in the present moment with your mind not projecting any future, even pain is not projected outward, so it's not scary. So my friend Boyd from South Africa once was munched by a crocodile in a river in Africa, South Africa. And he wrote about it in his wonderful book, Cathedral of the Wild. And he talks about the thing had him by the leg, and it basically almost pulled his leg off. But its goal was to go into the water with it, a hold on his leg, and then twist him to death. That's what crocodiles do. And he got away because he was very smart, and he grabbed a tree and he kicked the crocodile in the throat, and somebody came and dragged him away. So when Boyd met Byron Katie, she had read this story, I guess, in Cathedral of the Wild. And she met him and she said, I really loved your story about the crocodile. And he said, well, thank you. And she said, and you know, if you hadn't been projecting a future, wouldn't you have been so excited to be giving food to such an exquisite animal? And he was like, that is not the way I saw it. And she was like, yes, but can't you see how wonderful it would have been, the whole experience, if you just thought, this is amazing, I'm going to feed my leg to a crocodile? He was like, no, I cannot get there. And I don't expect us to get there either. And I think actually she was playing with him. She knew that he was already very far advanced in things like meditation and everything. And she was poking a little to see if he could go to a length that I think everyone knows is really absurd. But her point really is that if you're absolutely present, reality is always manageable. And by reality, I don't mean what you know is happening outside and in the world. I mean reality that is so present that an animal would understand it. So your dog may be in the room with you. If somebody comes in and attacks you, the dog will respond with fear. But the dog doesn't know about terrorism. The dog doesn't care about terrorism. It's not part of his reality. It's not part of the present moment. So the present moment is your reality, and that's another word for the truth. Like the only true thing you have is this moment. And if you come to this moment, really come to this moment, you'll see that everything you might be afraid of is in your future. And no matter how certain it seems, like death, you don't have to cope with it right now. And in fact, you can't cope with it right now. And that is the root of most of our anxiety and most of our fear, is that we are trying to cope with things before they are present. I was in absolute shocking stages of fear the entire time. My son was still inside me after his Down syndrome diagnosis. I was terrified and I could not cope. And I kept thinking, and people said, oh, God would never give you anything that you can't cope with. And I was like, I said bad words to them in my mind because I was not coping. And then I realized, because I couldn't stand it and I couldn't sleep and I couldn't stop throwing up, wait, the reason I can't cope with his future, the way people will taunt him at school, his failure in life, whatever, is that it hasn't happened yet. I can never cope with anything that isn't present. So I got really present because it was my only refuge from this terrible fear. So that's the first thing. Get so present right now. So your fear is big. Look around you. This is all you have to cope with. This, us on the gathering room right now, nothing else. So as you come into presence and reality, the next thing you want to do is slow everything down. So mostly our response to fear and anxiety is to rev up. That's a good flight or fight response. And or we freeze. But one thing we don't do is continue to move, but slowly. And this is something I also learned from my friends in South Africa who have encountered all kinds of, the crocodile is in the beginning of it, like lion attacks and incredibly poisonous snakes and floods and all the politics of various African countries that were scary when they were there, that kind of thing. And they really are the ones that taught me, and Boyd says this in his book, in a crisis, slow everything down. Not in the world at large, but here inside you. So, all right, slow down all your thoughts, slow down all your physical processes. And the best way to do this is to breathe more slowly. I don't know if we've talked about this before. Ro and I were making a podcast about fear last week, and I did this exercise, but it's always good to be reminded. So right now in the middle of your fear, we're going to do this breath count that they teach in the military and in martial arts. If you get attacked, you slow your breathing. And it's the first thing you slow down. So you breathe out to a count of 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then hold your breath. 1, 2. Then inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then hold your breath. 1, 2. Then exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you keep this pattern going. You might notice that it's because you're counting and observing, the left hemisphere of your brain is now tied up in managing this slowed breathing thing, and it can't go off into abstractions and start to become afraid of things that aren't present. So it actually assists in becoming more present. And then when you do act, this is the important thing, relax. This is true whether you've gotten sick, whether you've just been physically attacked. I've talked to lots of martial artists who say that relaxation, I've said this over and over, relaxation is like the cure for everything. And our culture teaches us that being uptight and frantic is the cure for everything. Opposite. Okay, so if you can relax, and the breathing will help you relax, and just tell yourself, relax, and do a physical relaxation scan for your whole body. Sometimes I'll just do that breath into the fibers of my muscles. So I'm going to do that slowed breathing down into the fluttering feeling in my stomach and get it to flutter more slowly until now it's just undulating like something in water. Now at this point, what you need to do is you need to become the still point in the hurricane that everyone's looking for. So there's all this fear out always, but right now some of it's about a possible pandemic, a present pandemic, whatever the truth may be. What you want to do is not to join the hurricane of fear, but to become the person people come to be calm. I've been thinking a lot about Love in the Time of Cholera. Fabulous, fabulous novel by Gabriel Marquez. What's his name? Marquez. I can't speak Spanish, but you guys know. Anyway, I love all his stuff, but Love in the Time of Cholera, the very name of the book, is about the fact that even when people are getting sick or there's a catastrophe of some sort or a natural disaster, if it's ongoing, you have to decide whether to be in continuous fear or to love, because the two work on a toggle switch. You cannot simultaneously be in your fight or flight reflex and in the part of your nervous system that loves. So it's the parasympathetic nervous system that loves, and it's the sympathetic nervous system that fears, and they can't be turned on at the same time. So the moment you say, I will love in the time of cholera, you become the eye of the hurricane. You become the still point. You become the thing in this present moment that is quiet, that is calm, above all, that is loving. And remember, courage literally comes from the word for heart, the coeur in French. So when you love, what you get is not a state of no danger. You get courage, which is the real answer to fear. So fearlessness is not getting into a state where there's nothing to be afraid of. It's being in a state where there's always something to be afraid of and choosing to live by heart, choosing to love in the time of cholera, and letting the love be the center of your existence and not whatever you're scared of. So find something to love and love it, and that will be your way of staying in this relaxed state no matter what comes your way. So I would love to answer some questions. Gracious Badger, please come back.
I will return for questions.
Hello.
Hello. How you been? I know how you've been. You've been just fine. I was just over there.
Yeah.
How bad could it have gone wrong, really, for you? Got some great questions already.
Yeah.
Donna asks, how do you distinguish between fear that serves to protect you from harm and fear that is taking you away from the present?
So glad you asked. We put this on our podcast. There's something, Gavin de Becker is an expert who studies fear, and he talks about clean fear versus dirty fear. And clean fear is a calm, strong compulsion to act constructively. Like one time when I was in a high-rise building and the fire alarm went off. This is when I was pregnant with Adam. And I thought, no big deal. I was on the 10th floor. I was fine. And then I saw smoke coming from under my door, and I opened the door, and the whole lobby was almost completely obscured by smoke. There was very little visibility. And I remember everything went click, click, click in my head. Everything slowed down. I went into my daughter's bedroom. I put on her snowsuit. I took a scarf to cover her nose and mouth. Didn't take care of my own self. Stupid mistake. But and then ran down the stairs. Almost died, but made it out. But the thing I remember is the absolute clarity that came when I realized the danger was real. And whenever I've been facing a present threat, I've had that clarity. The moment I start thinking, but what about 5 minutes from now? What about 10 minutes from now? I panic. I can't cope, because we can only cope with what's really here. So yeah, clean fear is it actually feels good. It's like, I know what to do and I'm going to do it now. If you're feeling any other thing, it's what Gavin Becker calls just worry or anxiety, and that will always serve you badly in an actually dangerous situation. So you're so worried about something that you can't take clear, effective action. That's not clean fear. It's just worry, and you can live without it. He says you can live, if you trust your clean fear, you can live without worry. And he should know. He's a violence expert.
Trust a violence expert if you want peace. Karen asks, how do we live with and respond to others who are projecting fear by living in the future? And I'll just say that's a lot of you asked similar questions.
Right.
So this is going out to all of you.
And that's why it's so important, that stage of becoming the still point, the eye of the hurricane. I mean, if you think of yourself in a crowded theater and somebody yells fire and everybody freaks out, ah! If you're freaking out too, you will not add anything but more hysteria to the place. But what everyone wants, you'll hear it, for example, that airplane crash where Pilot Scully landed the plane in the water and everyone got out. What all of them talked about when they interviewed the survivors and everyone got out was the way the flight attendant said, I know what to do, follow me, this is what you do. And they said it wasn't even what they were telling me to do. It was that they seemed to have this clear imperative to act, and they were calm. In a place of fear, if you even take 3 strangers who don't know each other and put them all in a room together and have them not talk, within about 20 minutes, their brain waves and heart waves will all be the same, and they will have assumed the pattern of the calmest person in the room. So in nature, a calm presence is, we instinctively, on an evolutionary level, we know that we need a calm presence. My best antidote for fear is to be a calm presence. So even if you don't know what to do, you say, let's slow down, everything's going to be fine, and let's make a plan. And you sort of take charge of the situation for yourself, but you also become that, and everyone calms down. And that's how all 193 people got out of that plane. 3 calm people calmed them all enough to make it orderly and effective and quick, and boom, they all got out.
Amazing.
So yeah, challenge yourself to be the heart, to be love in the time of cholera, to say, I'm going to choose not to fear right now, so that all these scared people will feel my presence and say, I can slow down and be present. I got this for the moment. I got this.
I love that. And I also think, you could really use it, because sometimes it is like you getting Katie's like snowsuit on and not getting something for yourself, is that sometimes we can be more motivated to take action on behalf of others than for ourselves.
Yeah.
So I love that, Marty. This is a great question from Ellen. She says, how do you prepare for the future, though, if you are not considering the worst case scenario that could come from your present reality?
You absolutely consider the worst case scenario, but you do it calmly. So you sit down, okay, so what if it were like the Spanish flu this time and it just wiped out 50 million people? Okay. See, to go, oh my God, it could do that, is one thing, but to say, that could happen. Okay, so what would we need to do in case of that? Like, even when the danger that you're able to project is very large, you can still hold it in calm. And even if the future is someday I'm going to die, you can hold that with calm. And we all do it. You're not afraid of your own death 24/7 to the point where you can't function. Or maybe you are. Most of us are like, yeah, it's going to happen. I'll deal with it when I get to it. That's a pretty catastrophic ending for the little animal, but we're all calm with it most of the time. You can be that way as you plan for potential catastrophe. We're going to have a sit down tomorrow our whole family and say, what do we need to buy just in case we get sick? What do we need? That we may not be able to go out shopping. We may feel too ill. Okay. And golly gosh, we have some people with Adam's immune system isn't up to par. Okay, how do we protect him? It's just you stay calm and you stay present and you be love in the time of cholera, no matter what it is you're considering. Yeah.
Excellent. Elizabeth asks, what about societal fears like climate change? She says, I hold a small part of the expertise that can help, and it's hard to sort through what's mine to move forward and what isn't amid a group that can be fearful.
Here's where I think that courage, the whole scope of the word courage needs to come into play, because if you try to decide by mind, the mind won't be able to make the decision. I've spoken repeatedly about how when they study people whose intellectual faculties have been damaged, brain damage, these people can make decisions easily. But if the emotion centers have been damaged, they can't make decisions. So we think of decisions as coming from intellect. And if you're trying to calculate what you should do, you'll just spin and spin and spin. And that actually will take you into more fear because you'll leave the present. But if you come back into the emotional side and you feel with your heart what you are meant to do, it feels like that strong, clear impetus to act. I mean, in terms of, I've always been obsessed with the destruction of ecosystems and the extinction of species and everything since I was tiny. And I freaked out for like 30 years. And then I kind of went, all right, I got a degree in sociology and a column in Oprah magazine. What can I do with that? Like that's what I'm working with. Okay, let's try to, everything I write, everything I do online, everything is about, let's try to create a transformation of human consciousness that will lead to a more intelligent and frankly spiritual approach to living in harmony with other species. That's what my heart says to do. When I had a kid with Down syndrome, people were like, you'll go march on the steps of the Capitol building. And I'm like, I was tired, but I could write a book. I could write a book that would help people hold it differently, to hold it by the heart instead of the mind. So that was what I could do from a place when I accessed my courage. And your courage will always tell you what to do, but it's the heart thing. It's not a brain thing. Yeah.
I love it. There's a few different people who have asked in various forms just about anxiety, like what about when there's not a clear trigger? What about generalized anxiety disorder? How does that all fit into this topic?
Boy, have I ever had that. When I sat down to meditate for long periods of time, there was once like a 3-month period where I was sitting at least an hour a day, and all it was increased anxiety. Every single day I would sit down and it would clock in higher than it was the day before, and then it would rise astronomically during that hour that I sat still. Then I would run around, it would kind of calm me down, sit down the next day, it would start at the high level and go even higher. I was freaking terrified the whole time. And the one thing that I used my courage to do was what I knew in my heart. I knew to sit there. I knew, and it doesn't have to be this for you. It's your heart knowledge. Whatever your heart knowledge says, do it. Mine was to sit still, and that will be part of it, to come into presence and to slow down. So I was used to my mind being everywhere but here and to moving very, very fast. And when I made myself actually stop, it was trial by fire for sure. But after 3 months of that, what I realized was that there was something watching the anxiety that was not the anxiety. And very slowly, my identity was able to shift into the observer instead of the anxiety. And then the anxiety started to just collapse like a flan in a cupboard. And I became the one watching, and it was completely calm. And these instructions to get present, to slow everything down, to relax, to breathe steadily, and then to become the eye of the hurricane and go into your heart. That's what happened to me during the next 3 or 4 months. And from going from a state of almost perpetual high anxiety, panic level anxiety, I went into a state of so much bliss, so much peace, and it was so worth it. And I really realized we choose to feed the fear, or we choose to stay present and go into the heart. We choose fear in the time of cholera or love in the time of cholera. We are free to choose that. So yeah, it's more fun to choose love.
I agree with that, Marty. That was beautiful.
Good. Thank you. So that takes us to the half hour.
Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone.
Oh, it's so good to see you all. We love you so much. And
hope you're feeling more present and less fearful.
Stay in your hearts and let all our hearts connect, and we will all together be the eye of the hurricane.
There you go. All right. We'll see you next week.